Episode 4 is here. I have Mr. Aaron Holtom with me today. He's part of the East Midlands Golf Academy. I went there for golf college with obviously Steve Astle, James Watley. You did little bits on the side when I was there. You have just hit 24 years in the golf industry, which means you're now a dinosaur. Could you give us a little bit of an introduction into your 24 years and where you're at now and what's going on?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for having me on.
You're
Cheers.
more than welcome.
Yeah, so yeah, 24 years. I'm 40 now. I started working in a shop, Simpfin, when I was 16. Stayed there for about 9 years, and then I've been full-time coach at Morley Hayes, East Midlands Golf Academy. Yeah, now for 15 years with James Watley and Stevie Assel. Yeah, that's it really. I went on to do a masters, so I finished the masters. I did 1 year at Birmingham Uni before the masters, and then went on to complete a masters, which was pretty good. Quite interesting. Met a lot of nice people.
What was that in, Aaron?
It was in sports coaching, so it's masters in sports coaching. So I had some school teachers. I spent a lot of time with some physios as well, as the kind of the courses kind of merged with their stuff. And I did some research into the short game. So kind of what's the difference in how the body segments, how they rotate, and what's the difference between chips and pitches. So it was quite a nice study, and it got I think we got 15 really good players, the best players could get my hands on. Had them hit 2 different style of shots and looked at the difference between chips and pitches.
Is that why I was part of the testing?
Hey?
Yeah, I didn't get the call up for that one, did I? Right, Aaron, I know you like working with juniors, beginner golfers, quite a bit. So give us what you would do when you're starting with a beginner, or what you would suggest a beginner does to start with.
Yeah, well, I'll leave the juniors.
Yep.
Because that could really get me fired up. Fired up for that one. But let's just go for like an adult beginner and where I would start. And what I would always do, I always would try to get people's understanding of contact, impact, quality of strike. I always do a very similar first lesson. And I want people to understand really what that club needs to do as it hits the ball. And I do a little quiz. Okay, shall I do a little quiz to you?
Yeah, let's do the quiz and see how good I am.
So if people are listening along and they are not, if they're new golfers, or if they're golfers, they're listening along, just have a little go at this and think about, let's say you've got an 8-iron or a 7-iron in your hand. So the first question is, do you aim to, when the ball is on the grass, do you aim to hit the ball off the top of the grass, or do you aim to hit the ground as well as the ball?
I'll give people 1 second to think. Yes.
Second is, well, the answer to the first one is we've got to hit the ground, right? We've got to have the lowest point somewhere, and the club kind of comes down, bottoms out, and then starts to rise again, right? And where the club is lowest, we call the low point. Club's coming down, low point. Now, where should that low point be? Should the lowest point be just before the ball when you play? Is that what you're trying to do? Get the club low, then have it rise into the ball? Do you think the ball is on top of the low point, or do you think that the low point is after the ball? So it can be 3 options: before, middle, or after. And then the third question is, what about the shaft of the club at impact? Should it be straight up? Should it be slightly tilted backwards? Or should it be leaning forwards with the top of the club ahead of the bottom? Now, I do that quiz I must do it at least 3 times a week, right?
Can I just jump in there, Aaron? Because I bet you don't even do that with just beginner golfers.
I do it nearly every the first time I meet them, right? And it's the hour done. And then it leads on to what I think is the most important factor, which tops all of these things, is I hit them 3 shots and I say, which is the correct height the ball should go, right? And everybody, it doesn't matter if they, but nearly everybody is expecting that ball to fly higher than what I would, right? So we've got a TrackMan 4 at the range, and we've got the optimum launch angles. It can be a bit different for depending on your speed, yeah. But the amount of people that come in with 7-iron and are expecting it to kind of launch at 35, 40 degrees, or they hit one of those and it does go up, the ball's on a small tee, the ball goes right up into there, and I say, did you like that one? They go, oh, loved it. Straight up in the air, loved it. Great shot. Well, we know that if that club is tilting, it has to be tilting backwards in order to launch that ball high. So if that club is tilting backwards, George, that low point is nearly always before the ball.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it's just criminal, right? It's criminal. So just trying to get people to understand the key concepts around impact, hit the ball, brush the grass, and then get to somewhere where you can track the flight of the ball, the launch of the ball, and get it flipping going like that.
Yeah.
And then the magic happens then, because when people get really clear on that, the most important thing about golf, the magic happens that then people move their body in completely different ways, and they don't have to think about moving in different ways. They're not consciously trying to maneuver their head or you know, it just starts to flow if we get that the key concept to the top of the chain. Is that your experience as well? Would you do kind of concepts around impact and then notice that things change with the swing?
I think yeah. Whenever I'm in a lesson, I think you always have to start with concept, right? Because if the most or the least intrusive way of doing something is, okay, let's just talk about what you think you're doing good, and actually, is that right? So if like you say, if their concept is, I've got to lift this thing in the air, well, no, actually, you need to get that club getting into the ground after the ball, and that's going to create some spin that's going to lift the ball for you. But they don't necessarily understand that at the start of the lesson. So going through that concept does, and it does change people's movements. There's no doubt about it that it changes people's movements. You see the guys that stay on 2 feet, finish on 2 feet, then start to move themselves more towards target. Yeah. You also see them maybe move in a slightly different way up and down as well. I've noticed that you start to see people move forward and down earlier when you tell them the concept of, okay, you have to get into the ground after the ball. You start to see them start to move that way a little bit earlier rather than yeah, but without a doubt, concept comes first over anything.
Yeah, and I think that the most important the least spoken concept is the height of the ball. Now, people will tell me, I know I should be hitting the ground after the ball, but I just don't. Right? They say I know I should be. Or I'll say to them, do you aim to hit the ground? And they say, no, not really. And I say, do you watch golf on TV? And they go, yeah. I say, do they hit the ground? They go, yeah. And it's because they know, right? But it's that it doesn't match up with the flight. They think, well, if I hit the ground, it's going to go too low, right? And then that leads on to, well, what kind of clubs should you be using if you're a beginner, if you're 2 or 3 months in, right? If you're practicing with a 5-iron and you've only got a swing speed of 60 or 70 or 70 miles an hour, it's going to go so flat with some shaft lean that it's going to look pants, and it's not really going to be playable, right?
And these guys are using Callaway Big Berthas from back in 1970 that don't have the help that clubs do nowadays. I think you're much better off as a beginner going to get yourself, you can still go second hand, but something that's going to give you some help to launch that thing in the first place, instead of these clubs from way back in, you know, from your teenage years that maybe don't, that that are not for a beginner golfer.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, first thing I would do is then look in the bag. I get the 3, 4, 5-iron, chuck them in the corner, say, don't even touch them. And I go in my bag. I've got like a 4 hybrid that's really lofted, and then get them 5 hybrids, 7 woods. Like when I was a junior, 7 wood was the best thing on the planet. Like I used a 7 wood until I was kind of 14. I just didn't have the club head speed to hit a driver. So, you know, people have got those, not juniors, some of the people who are not particularly sporty. If you've just got that slightly slower club head speed, getting some loft with some weight further back from the face, it's an absolute game changer. 5 hybrids, I think, are absolutely genius. Yeah. But we tend to see people trying to hit 7 irons too much. And really, if you've not got the club head speed, it's going to go so low. And then they start hitting low, and they thought, that's too low. My friend who plays, he hits it really high. And then that starts the tipping back, the right foot staying down. So I think Adam Young is a really, really good coach. I love the way he communicates. I think his book's brilliant.
Yeah.
But I would argue, and he may argue differently now, that there's a lot of talk about low point, and low point got really popular. But I don't see loads of people talking about launch. And I think launch is the thing that it's the thing that you're affecting out there. Do you know what I mean? And if you get clear on the picture that you're trying to create with your club, the ball flight, I think that's the most important thing. And I don't know if I've heard anyone talk about it as the ball flight launch angle being as important. Yeah, a lot about strike, a lot about leaning the shaft or not leaning the shaft.
Yeah, I think there's talk around the principles of it, but launch isn't mentioned. It's more low point shaft lean that gets you launch. Whereas, like you say, if you talk about the concept of launch, how do people move around that is not a bad way of switching it up, right? Is doing it differently, that the concept shifts first of all, and people can figure out bits from there when it comes to launch, for sure.
Yeah.
And if you can't, you then end up cueing them, right? You just cue them with, okay, so if you need to launch this lower, you're going to need some shaft lean, you're going to need some form of that club's low point being more ahead. How would we do that? And then you again see them start to move differently, and it goes from there, right?
Yeah, if you're a beginner golfer and you're near Georgia, you know, you're thinking about having lessons with George, and in that area, or you beginner golfer anywhere, and you're not sure about whether lessons are right for you, just go on YouTube, go to TrackMan launch numbers, right? Make sure that you've got the ladies PJ Tour, they're very fast. They're still very fast, but they launch slightly differently to the men, right? Because the men swing it faster. But just get a rough idea. And I always start with a sand wedge, right? Sand wedge is the shortest club in most bags. It's got the most loft. It's the easiest to make contact because you're closest to the ball, right? And we know that the best players in the world launch their sand wedge around about half the loft of the club. So round about 30 degrees. Now, if you're at a driving range where they haven't got premium balls, you can add on about four degrees of launch, right? Because they don't quite spin the same. They don't get quite as much friction. So if you've got a launch monitor at your driving range and you hit some half swing 40 yard shots, and you see the ball launching at 45, which is really common, right? And people are trying to do this with a small sand wedge, then you're absolutely right, George. You think, well, that's going too high. There's number says there, I need to get it down. You will get there by yourself if you have got clear idea of what you actually want to create. Yeah. And it's the spin, the low launching shots with spin, it kind of flies lower but spins and then it stops. And that's another thing that most people who are beginning, they think it's the kind of elevation in the shot that will make it stop. And what tends to happen then is you thin it and you fat it, first of all. When you do hit it high, you ain't got a clue how far it's going to go, right? And then it tends to run out of spin. The spin's wasted as it's in the air, and it can still roll forward. So yeah, so that's where I would start if you're a beginner golfer. You want it launching about 30, even 35 degrees is fine for me. 40 yard shot, and then if it is launching high, you're right, you will figure it out yourself, because you know if it's going too high, the shaft must be too far leaning backwards.
Yep, 100%. So we've obviously touched on launch, strike there. Now you've got this beginner golfer in front of you. I would say from there, for me, in a beginner golfer, the next thing is, I would call it flow. I think they are so stiff that they don't understand the next concept, which is actually it's a swing.
Yeah, yeah.
And that would be, once you've got that impact set, how can we actually build some flow to the movement to create more club head speed, right? Because I wouldn't know, I mean, it's rare to see a beginner golfer that swings it at a relatively good speed straight away, right? So
yeah.
I would then move on. Once I've got strike, then I would move on to flow, building that club speed. Would that be similar, or would you go elsewhere with it from there?
I would move on to that. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. You would start the first lesson, right? And if we go back to that first lesson, and then we'll tail into what you're saying, which is true, right? I would like to see them work on a consistent strike. And I say to them, right, you've got 3 ways that you can make this task easier or harder. We want to succeed. We want a challenge that's just about hard enough that we can do it nearly all the time, but we just can't, right? And there's 3 things that I say to people. The first is that you can change the tee height. So if you're a beginner, you want to be hitting anything 8-iron, 7-iron, you want it definitely on a tee, but even sand wedges to begin with, I would put it on a small tee. Some of the driving ranges, they're a bit too big, right? The one at Morley is just a bit too big, but get it on a small tee. And if it was a junior, I would say hit the tee and makes the ball go up, right? So that's the first thing you can do. Now, if you're doing well and the ball's all going up, you need to make it harder. Put it on fluffy grass. That's going well. You've got another option. Put it on the mat that you stand on at the driving range. And that's the first one. You've got easy, medium, or hard, so that you can tailor your practice, right? If it's all going well and you're getting 90% success rate, you need to make it harder so you can challenge yourself. But if you're hitting it terribly and you're about to chuck your clubs in the bin, I would like the first month of golf to be like, particularly the first 3 lessons, like, I can do this. So I make the task easier. So first is the tee or the lie. Second is the club. So I would do a lot of sand wedge, pitching wedge, 9-iron. Love them, right? Yeah. Got plenty of loft that they're not trying to help the ball up in the air. They can hit down on it without loads of swing speed. And then the third is the length of swing. So I recommend doing smaller swings so you can build up the strike, brush the grass in the right place, and then build into longer and longer swings. And if you play with those three variables, the tee, the club, and the length of swing, most of the time my players will then, I'd recommend that they start on a small tee with a medium swing sand wedge. And when they can do that, put it on the ground. Great. When they can do that, maybe go back to a 9-iron on a small tee, medium swing. It's going to be harder. Just try and find that place where they can do it, but
yeah, it's sitting on the edge of a challenge, right? It's just sitting on that edge of challenging.
Yeah. And what normally happens is that a fella says, "Come on, missus, I'm taking you to the golf. You're going to learn golf." She goes, "What?" You come into the golf course. You give a 3-iron on the ground, full swing, right? And then they cock it up, hit it all over the shop, and then they start barking out instructions, explicit instructions. Keeping your head,
keep your head down.
Keep your head straight. In your wrist, love. You're breaking your wrist. And it's like the task is far too hard.
Yeah.
And I would argue, I'm going to do myself down here, but as a coach, really, I'm just trying to make the challenge right for the player. And most often they figure it out themselves. And it can be a bit annoying when you go for a lesson, and I get this, that you go for your first lesson and you're just doing small pitch shots and striking it really well. And you can see people think, well, I just want to hit the driver. And I would say, well, go and hit the driver, right, for the later part of your session. But you want to be building up a solid memory of what brilliant impact feels like. And that sets them up for life then. And I think within a couple of lessons and 3 or 4 practice sessions, you can get people brushing the grass with a sand wedge, launching it well. And then you're moving on to your thing. Then it's, well, how do we then turn that into a fuller swing? You've done that for 3 or 4 hours, but you can't play golf hitting half swing sand wedges. So then you're right. Then you need to kind of get some flow, get some speed into it. How do you go about getting that into that flow?
I was introduced to it's got to be one of the best drills I know for most things now. It just gets people to move better. So I had a friend of mine, I'll name drop him, Rich Glenn, who come in, and I had a guy that was moving quite badly, and I asked him for a second opinion, and he got out this bit of rope, folded it in half, and he went to the guy, "Just swing this for me." He started swinging, and he was like, you can swing it, but it can't smack you in the back. So he just started swinging it, and it was tapping his back and tapping his back. And he just said, just continuously swing it, right? Just back and through, don't stop, back and through, back and through. And then you capture it on camera, and the guy was just moving so much better. And then you can change. So just by getting something that is flowing, like moving object, heavier moving object, seems to get people to move more accordingly. And then from there, stage it up to adding more speed elements, where you start to get a swish sound in front of the ball. You start to get that sound that's going in front of the ball, and then you start to see them create a little bit more ground force as well with it. So you start to see them work forward and down a little bit more before they extend up into that nice finish. And it was just, I mean, I've used it probably several times since with relatively new golfers, and the change is just dramatic. Like, they actually swing the thing, not trying to hit the ball. And once, I think there's another concept thing, is once you start getting people to swing, it is a golf swing, it's a baseball swing, there's all those elements of swinging in there. They then start to show a little bit more freedom, a little bit more flow. And I mean, you can see I've seen guys increase their speed 20 miles an hour just in one session from just getting a little bit of rope or a heavy resistance band and just swinging the thing back and through, getting that flow motion. What about you? Got any?
No, I like it. I would say that that kind of ticks the boxes for me. We don't. What definitely doesn't work is thinking loads about the ball and thinking loads about impact. You know, that moment. You're absolutely right. Although we've talked a lot about the concepts around impact, when you're actually performing it, you know, we know what we'd like to happen with the ball, but we don't want to be thinking so much about the ball. And I always worry when you see people staring at that ball for, you know, forever. It's so still, staring at the ball, and it terrifies me. So I would do something similar. I would tend to do follow through position, and I really like follow through position because it incorporates the whole movement, just like your drill does. It kind of summarizes the whole of the movement. You can put it into a feeling rather than a step by step kind of do this, then do this, then do this. I particularly like half swing follow throughs and full follow throughs, because then after the shot, you can check for feedback. Did I get my right heel up? Is my belt buckle pointing towards the target? Am I in balance? And there's no doubt that when you swing fast in balance, it feels nice.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like a homely feeling.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how we do it really as golfers. But once you get people swinging with a bit of speed and then into the balance position, like you say, it starts to get a bit more flow about it. And that's very, very rarely would it not work for me. I think I did quite a good job on those initial first few lessons, making sure that the ball's on a small tee, swinging all the way till balance, and then they can get some feedback. One more thing on that I think is really, really good is that then they can step away from the ball, have a few practice swings, and if they lose that feeling, we can do it before. So swing in balance, hold the balance, step in, and then just repeat the whole movement.
Yeah.
So and that kind of then ties into what we've said before, breaking it into lots of separate sections is something that I would never want to do. I would never really want to change someone's backswing or get the wrist in a different position unless I would really, really have to. And I would sit down with the player and I would do it in October, November, and December and say, look, we keep getting it so far in here or so far out there in these wrists, but we are probably going to play worse because we're going to break this swing down into kind of sections and build it up. And I would almost get them to fill in a disclaimer and say, no, you're not going to do this on the golf course, are you, Dave? Right? Because this is not good for short-term performance. If we want short-term performance, it wants to be something relatively simple, something that incorporates the whole move for the majority of beginners. Now, when you've got super duper whooper skilled athletes who've been playing for their life, right, a long time, they can swing, talk, tell you what they're having for lunch and hit a golf shot because it's so automatic. They might be able to kind of make a move on the backswing, and then you can do joke swings where you send it up here and then loop it. Those kind of players, that starts to get a little bit more difficult. I listened to a Noel Rousseau podcast, and he's a good golf coach, and he did some research on how much we can think about as we swing. And for some players, I think they can handle kind of do this and do that. But for the majority of golfers out there or beginners, just keep it. My practical tip, think about the whole movement, something that incorporates the whole movement rather than breaking it into, now do this, now turn my hip, then drop it in the inside. And when you ask most people, George, what they're thinking about on the range, it's normally that crap.
Yeah, so I've got a really good story on that. So I did, I've obviously worked with Hugh Marr for last year and a half, 2 years or so. and we did a coach camp with him and Andreas Kelly, and two very different coaching styles. But we were watching basically Hugh and Andreas coach, and Hugh brought a whiteboard with him, and he had, I think this guy was about 12, right? And Hugh had said to him one thing to do in his golf swing, right? One thing for this. He only did 15, 20 minutes with the guy, one thing. And he went after the lesson, he went to this guy, right, now write on the whiteboard what you're thinking about. And the fella put down 6, 7 different things. And all you had said to him was this one thing in swing to do. And like that, it's just like a light bulb moment of going, wow, if I give this guy 2 things, he's probably then thinking of 15 things, which is just like you're not going to be able to cope with that.
Yeah, you know, it sounds daft, but you go for a lesson and you're thinking, has he noticed my bolts? I'm going bold at the back here. Has he noticed it? Or I put on by a stone in the last 6 months. Like, that's the kind of crap that most people is going around their heads. Like, I need a haircut. I shouldn't be going for this lesson. I need a haircut. And you worry about that stuff. That's really the reality. People aren't going in there. It's a great story with a completely clean slate and just ready to take on your information. They've got histories and baggage and hang-ups. And, you know, another one I love is when someone says, oh, my wife bought me this for a birthday present. Okay, right. This is going to be interesting, because we're not going to change much. I tell you that. We're going to make sure you leave happy. And not breaking your swing down, you know, in intersections on that kind of lesson. That's going to be something. We just make the ball flight improve a bit, and then we send you on your way, because you've got to be invested in it. And if your missus is forcing you to come, you know, because it's your 30th wedding anniversary, you ain't diving in, are you? No.
So talk me, if you've got a lesson like that, I'll let you go first, and then I'll explain what I will probably do with it. But would you what level would you go in at? What would be the first thing that you would do with something like that? I don't want to give away what I would say,
Yeah,
without framing a good.
I would normally say, what would you like to do today? What would success look like for you today? What would you like to leave here knowing or being able to do? And then they normally say, I want to driver further. I want to stop slicing my driver. And I'm like, okay. And I say, well, let's just hit a few chips and pitches just to warm up. Or let's hit a few 8-irons to warm up. And then I would do a mini skills test. So I'd watch them hit a few 7-irons. And then I'd think, okay, I'll give them a score out of whatever. And then I'd let him hit a few drivers. And then I'm let him hit a few pitch shots, right? And what normally happens is one of the areas is actually quite good, and the other area is actually not too bad. But there's one thing that's just dreadful, like really dreadful. And I've had scratch handicap players that I've taught for months, well, not that long actually, but you know, 3 lessons, and I'm like, this guy rips it. I said, just give it a few wedge shots for me, thin. I'm like, what's going? He's like, oh mate, yeah, I've got the yips of my chipping. Didn't even want to tell me. Just hoped I'd never mention it.
Oh, dearie me.
So then, and then I could say, well, you know, well, you've hit your drives actually compared to the target. You've actually hit your drives over 200 yards here, and you only play once or twice a year. And did you know how wide, you know, tour players hit kind of 70 yards?
Yeah.
From right.
63, Aaron, to be precise.
Eh?
63 to be precise.
All right, yeah. And then I would say, look, shall we do that? And I would always go with someone who's coming in like that. I would try and get the easy wins. It's going to make them play loads better with the least amount of effort. So I want them to go, oh my God, I've saved 5 shots there. Like, I can now chip. But then I am the servant as well, right? So I'm there to serve. If they go and shank load of chips and then thin it. I mean, it's never happened, but you can imagine someone say, I never normally do that. I just want to work on my driver. Well, then I think, well, this guy is an arsehole, but I'll do it for him. I'll do whatever people ask me to do. Yeah. I'm not saying no. One quick story on that. This was funny. The guy, I don't know, I should name the place. Oh no, I won't name the place. This guy that I taught, and he used to go down south and play a lot of money for these swanky golf lessons. And his missus would go down with him. And it was a full day trip to go on the train, go down to this swanky place, pay a fortune for these golf lessons. And he want that, and their system was breaking it down. Here, then here, then here, then here. And the guy was not in a bit of a mess. Anyway, his missus started playing, having lessons down there. The coach said she's not allowed to hit a driver. So she had lessons for like 6 months, said she's not allowed to even touch a driver, right? So she came for a first lesson where you take these 4 people on the golf course, and a fella was coming for about a month. And I said, come on, Elaine, you can come on. And we used to do in the range 1 week, then on the course the next week. The weather was nice. She turns up. She got the gear, right? And I was like, tee's free. She'll go on the golf course. She says, I've never been on the golf course. I goes, come on, Elaine, you'll be all right. She says, I've never hit a driver. I said, just open that. So I got on the tee. She's never played before. First, get that driver in your hand. I just aimed the left, opened the club face up, and got a big slice. Flew right nearly on the green. She outdrove her husband, right? She loved it. And she came for like 5 years, and we basically just ended up playing on the golf course. But, you know, people pay us. Do you know what I mean? We can only advise. And then if they want to go in whatever they work on, we're there to support them. That did my head in. I can imagine paying that much and then not being able to.
Yeah.
Runs me up. Anyway.
Yeah, that's crazy. Going back to the way that you do in terms of like your little testing stuff. I work most of my guys, I would say 95% of my guys are on what I call development programs, and they all get this Google sheet which has it's I would say it's semi hard work, but you're on the program, so you're committed. Like that's the initial upfront is this is what you have to do if you want to be on the program. This is my conditions for us to work together to get better, right? And there is a stat sheet on there which is the Tiger 5. So like how many bogeys are inside 9-iron yardage? Did you chip twice on any hole? How many double bogeys did you have? Any bogeys on par 5s? Any 3 putts? And I get them to record those 5 stats. And from there, you can work out the areas in which you find that lowest hanging fruit. Yeah. And work from there. But you can't my better guys will always be strokes gained, but then the guys that you want to get that little bit of initial bite will be right. Just go out, do these 5 stats, and we will then start to discuss where we need to go with your game. Because like you say, like those guys come in and they don't think they're very good with an iron, or they don't think they're very good with driver. But if they've got a pattern that might be a 25-yard slice, but it's a pattern that you can work with, whereas they're going out and they're fatting one wedge shot, the next wedge shot is thin, the next one is a shank, then that's the pattern there is it's all over the place. So that's your lowest hanging fruit, right? Yeah. But they don't see it that way. They don't see it that way until you put the facts in front of them.
Well, that's it. And that's what a skills test is nice. It's nice to do that. You can't get away from it.
Yeah.
It's common, a lot of people, if you're lucky enough to start golf before you're 18, you've probably got a short game.
Yeah.
But if you start when you're 20 or above, right, your first 6 months at a driving range. So you're banging 7-irons and drivers all day long. And then you just haven't got much time. You're not very good with wedges and chipping and pitching. And it's really, really common. Really,
Where you've gone on to, I know your little program where you do one week range, 1 week on course. What's your theory on that split with a beginner golfer?
I love it. I've got these classes called golf, not golf swing.
Yep.
So the downside of them is it's a group, right? And sometimes you get 4 people who've got similar interests. It doesn't have to be similar ages, but just similar interests, and they just get on, right? Yeah. Everybody is kind of happy to go on the golf course. We'll go on the golf course, but it's like being in a band. Do you know what I mean? It's really hard managing people's personalities, and if one guy just doesn't get on with the other, it kind of messes it up. So I've had some absolutely really successful groups that have gone on forever, and they still, you know, they'll go around each other's houses and all that stuff. I think it's a better way to learn, if I'm being honest, like getting out on the golf course and getting out on the golf course early. Like within the first month of playing, you want to be out on the golf course. You want to understand. If you don't, the coach is talking about chipping and putting, and you're thinking, forget that. Awful. I want to smack it. But then you get them on the golf course and they're smacking it and then taking 20 around the green. There's no sale then for working each in different part of the game. Yeah. So I think it's a very good way to go. I'll tell you one more thing that's for the coaches that might maybe listening. It's quite easy to have diminishing returns though, right? So when you've been out on the golf course for 9 months with a group, they're making good decisions. They're not hitting, 6 irons in the rough. They're hitting pitch and wedge. They're not chipping with 60s when they're a yard off the green. They're using the putter. And you kind of feel like, sometimes I felt in the past, like I'm not really, it's great fun, but I'm not really adding a lot. And, they're still paying me, although you're only paying a quarter of a lesson because it's split between 4, but it's slightly diminishing returns on the on-course. And I would argue that you get slightly more, a bit of diminishing returns on individual lessons anyway, with players that you worked for many years. I think the first 2 or 3 lessons, you can change someone's world. But, 1 to 3 lessons, you can make a big change. The 40th to the 43rd lesson, it's like it starts to get stickier. And even Tiger Woods found that with Butch, didn't he? He was like, what are we working on next? And Butch is like, what are you talking about? It's just the best year ever. You're ripping it. But he wasn't satisfied. He wanted to keep on going. And that's probably, I've never really thought of it like that, really. But that's definitely the case, like diminishing returns. So I would recommend it if people are up for on-course sessions. I think they are good.
I've always said any beginner or new to golf person that comes into me, it's like, I'm obviously got a studio and at Red Libbets, it's harder to get them out on the golf course at Red Libbets because it's such a busy place, and it makes it quite difficult to get them out and give them the time that they need on the golf course when you've got groups all around you. But I always say, go to a local 9-hole and just get yourself out on the golf course. Understand what you need to do to play golf, because it's amazing, these guys that can come in and hit 140, 8 irons, whatever they're doing, but then get on the golf course and on a little par 3 course, they're still shooting 50, and it's like, how are you managing that if you're hitting these shots? But because they have no concept of, you need to chip and putt all right.
Yeah, well, that's what started it off. That's exactly what started that off for me, probably 12 years ago. Is that, I've got people coming in for lessons. I'm like, this guy rips it. He looks amazing. He's got 7 irons, because I'm an idiot. I think I'm the best golf coach ever. And all I'm really doing is just putting him in one situation in the range with the same club, and he's getting quite good at it. And I see him at the weekend, and I'm like, here he comes, here's the winner. How'd you get on? 120. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I'm getting paid. Yeah. I'm getting that. Yeah. And I was in the doldrums. I'm like, this is too many people coming in, looking great. And then I'm having to say, I hate that. I used to say it all the time. It's not, I used to say stuff like, it's not too bad that. It's not too bad. It's not trying to soften people down. You know what I mean? Like they're upset and you're trying to say, no, it's good. I don't ever say that anymore. I used to say that an awful lot. When you have a lesson that just starting to dive down when they're not getting it, that was me taking on a task that was too hard. So now I would, if it starts doing that, I'd change the task and then bring it back up again. But that's what started me with the golf, not golf swing. Was too many people who should be shooting in the 80s, shooting in the 110s, and it's just like the skills of when your driver is not working and you've hit your last 10 drives right, and the wind's off the left, and there's out of bounds on the right, you do not hit your driver, right? You got to. It's just so basic, but I don't
disagree. You got to hit driver everywhere.
This would be the one that goes straight, or choosing.
That's the one that they aim left on, and it goes left.
Yeah. Choosing the club dependent on the distance you've got to go, instead of the lie of the ball. And if the lie is poor, you have to take more loft. The more the ball is sitting poorly, the bigger divot you have to take. Putting, you're allowed to use your putter when you're not on the green. So around the green, just using off the green, just using a putter. And that they're kind of the main ones there that people and another one. I'm gonna have to one more whinge here, George. 3 woods, and these manufacturers are calling them fairway woods. It's like, I can't hit a 3 wood. If I hit a 3 wood, I've got to open the face up, aim left, and hit cuts, because I'm not good enough. I've not got the speed. I cannot hit 3 wood, and I'm supposed to be a pro. I'm supposed to be, right? If you're 28 handicap or 36 handicap, it's not a fairway wood, right? It's probably not much point having a 3 wood. You want a 7 wood or a 9 wood, and just pap it. Just you'll hit it and it'll go up in the air. But 3 woods off the deck, and people say to me, I just want to be able to get my 3 wood off the deck. I'm like, what are you playing off? 54. I'm like,
I've got one, but I've got a good little question for you then, Aaron. What's the harder shot? 70-yard fairway bunker or 3 wood off the deck?
3 wood off the deck.
Yeah.
Easy. Just thin it out there.
Yeah. Yeah, thin it out the trap. Yeah.
Yeah. Fairway, 3 wood fairways. Oh, awful thing. Awful. It should be banned.
Do you have, before we finish up, do you have any more wise words for us, Aaron?
I would say, as a summary,
yeah,
if you're an intermediate golfer, alter the task difficulty when you are practicing. And if you're doing really well, make it harder. And if you're not doing very well, make it easy. You've got 3 ways: the lie, the club, and the length of swing. And keep that kind of positivity and that confidence in your game by making sure that 70% of your shots that you hit at the range are well struck out the middle and fly close to how you imagined. If you're going to the driving range and hitting just cack, then the difficulty, and some days you have it, right? Some days you're just amazing, and the other days you haven't got it, right? On those days where you haven't got it, you just got to let the ego go. Just make the task easier. That'll be my finishing words.
Nice. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Totally agree with you on that. There'll be so many people out there that just bashing drivers on the driving range when they totally could be just half swinging that sand wedge, locking down that 40-yard shot. That would be an absolute game changer for most. So that's quality advice. Aaron, where can people find you, and include your YouTube here, because I like your YouTube?
Oh, I don't even know. I think Aaron_Holtom on Instagram.
You should know this stuff. You're so old now. You should know your own Instagram.
I think Aaron Holtom. If you search that, you'll probably find me.
Yeah, yeah. If not, East Midlands Golf Academy, you will find Aaron on there as a legend at the top of the radar.
And I'm on Skillist, so if anybody's there listening wants any kind of a free analysis on Skillist, find me on there. I've got 1,000 lessons on there now, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, he's very good, mate. Well, it's been a pleasure chatting golf with you, Aaron, and I'm sure we'll do it at some point again soon. Hopefully, I'll head up to Derby and show you, Steve, and James how it's done. Absolute pleasure.